Santiago Siri is a pioneer in blockchain and digital governance. He founded Democracy Earth, an organization exploring how blockchain, decentralized identity, and liquid voting could redefine political participation for the internet age. His work asks a simple but radical question. If our economies are already global and digital, why do our institutions remain territorial and analog? Today, he joins us to explore what borderless citizenship might look like, how governance could be built on code rather than bureaucracy, and how emerging technologies may rewrite our social contract. Santi, welcome to State Change.
Thank you for inviting me and having me in this amazing place.
I'm really excited to have you here. So when our mutual friend James originally introduced us, the first thing I did was Google you to figure out what exactly it was that you were working on and thinking about. And one of the first of many pieces of writing that you've put out there was the Smart Social Contract. And we'll touch on more detail today, but I was really struck by how much it resonated with effectively the premise for this entire project. The idea that technology is moving at an exponential pace and society tends to move linearly, and that divergence is creating a tension that I think you are incredibly articulate in exploring and writing and thinking about. And in fact, the institutions that historically have helped us to absorb these technological shocks and to kind of keep an even keel on society amid the chaos are in decline globally. And you're thinking about ideas about how to remake these institutions and redefine them using technology, and in some case, displacing legacy institutions with technology. So we're going to touch on all of that today. Before we touch on that, I really want to start with your origin story. So, how is it exactly that you first came into contact with these ideas and with crypto and with digital governance?
All right. So I was born in Argentina. And being born in Argentina means you're probably born in financial turmoil, in a country that has a lot of challenges where it faces inflation, capital controls, inefficient governments, corruption. And particularly my generation lived through a very big crisis in 2001 where people's savings were completely lost or devalued by the government. And it was a shocking moment for our young history. So growing up, I think that myself and many builders, hackers, activists, programmers, entrepreneurs from my generation really look up to the Web3 technologies that are out there or the crypto technologies that are out there that can help improve our financial institutions, our currency, or governance. In my case, I was actually working on virtual currencies before I knew about cryptocurrencies. In 2009, I did a pet project with some friends called the Woofy Bank, which was a currency based on your reputation, where we applied the PageRank algorithm to your social feed on Twitter, where we weighted your retweets and your influence in social media. And based on that, we would give you an allocation of this virtual currency thinking, this is probably 2009, around those years, thinking probably about the influencer market that could emerge out of social media. But that really got my antenna fixed on the idea of currency, money, got me into researching the history of money. And a friend of mine, Manu Arauz, who later he became one of the founders of Open Zeppelin, which is one of the best cybersecurity firms in the country, he actually sent me Satoshi's paper in 2011. And he said, hey, you should check this out. It's very similar to Woofy. Obviously had nothing to do with what I did. I was thinking about virtual currencies and influencing social media. But he had this very powerful idea of there are no banks, there's no central bank, there's no central authority, there's this thing called the blockchain. Settlement happens through a decentralized consensus. And it's in the middle of the turmoil of the, Occupy Wall Street crisis that happened in the US, which is also resonates very similarly to the kinds of financial crisis that we lived in Argentina. So I got interested in Bitcoin very, very early on. There was this rumor that it was useful to buy anything you want on the web.
Sure.
And I had to check that out.
This is a Silk Road situation.
Silk Road, exactly. I remember, the myth around Silk Road. I remember reading articles about it, and okay, is this real? This cannot possibly be real. So I remember downloading Tor, accessing to the dark web, accessing this website that, after finding the .onion URL on Reddit, that gave me a blank page, and really scratching my head and saying, why is it a blank page and not a 404 missing page message? And then I realized, well, maybe I should check the source code. And when I checked into the source code, there were the instructions on how to specifically create a username and a PIN number to access Silk Road. And then, boom, this very psychedelic website appeared. I remember making an order. Probably in today's price of Bitcoin, I paid like an apartment worth of stuff. But the order arrived to my home 2 weeks later. I get this envelope from the Netherlands. And I was like, what is this thing that comes from the Netherlands? And then I remember opening it up and realizing, oh, yes, I
You'd forgotten
remember.
that you. It's like
Yeah,
ordering an Amazon package that you forget
exactly.
about. Yeah.
And it had like this hologram that said, "We are anonymous," which I thought it was very cool. And yeah, I realized, wow, in a single transaction, I was able to make something that went beyond the control of the traditional financial system. It was an anonymous transaction. I was able to get whatever I bought into my home without any issue. And to me, that was like a very revolutionary thing,
Mm.
to actually see a technology that is effectively disrupting the very concept of money and bringing privacy back to the internet. That was the rabbit hole for me. Once
Yeah.
that happened, I started tweeting and talking obsessively about Bitcoin everywhere. And
Yeah.
I think I was probably one of the very first ones to talk about it in the media here in Argentina. And it caught a lot of attention because we were under capital controls. It was forbidden to buy dollars. It was, we were facing rising inflation. So I guess initially a lot of geeks and a lot of hobbyists and enthusiasts about technology really understood the concept very fast.
Mm.
And then it was like a seed that grew into an enormous community and an entire industry now.
Do you think if you hadn't been born in Argentina, that you would have come across this technology at the time that you did?
That's a great question, and I honestly think that I'm very Argentinian, and my obsessions are in relation to the kinds of challenges that my community has faced, and I think that if I was born in somewhere else, I lived in Spain for 5 years, and I remember going to my daughter's school to give a talk about crypto and Bitcoin, and for the folks there, it was just an intellectual curiosity.
Yeah.
They thought, okay, this is very interesting, but why would I use this if I'm already happy with the euros in my bank account and I'm not willing to challenge my preconceptions of fiat money? And to me, Bitcoin was like a no-brainer. We Argentines are used to that. The money in the bank is not really there. The 2001 crisis was huge,
Mm.
and people lost their savings. People lost, their dreams. It was a very traumatic financial crisis.
Mm.
So I grew up with my father always telling me, never leave your money in the bank. Imagine how bizarre that is, because these are institutions that you should trust, that you should be safe, should be secure. But we Argentines uh, are grow in a trustless environment since we are babies, and I think that being Argentine has definitely a lot to do in the degree that my interest in these subjects are very, very strong.
Mm. You mentioned the encounter with someone at your daughter's European school. They mentioned that this was a more of an intellectual
Yeah.
pursuit. In your case, of course, it is an intellectual pursuit, but you've also taken that action into the real world.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, created a political party
Yes.
around this concept. Can you
Yeah.
tell me about what it's like? I mean, you really walked the walk. I mean, you're not just sharing ideas, writing documents, handing out pamphlets. You're
Yes.
building coalitions. You're building an activism group.
Mm.
what was that experience like, translating the kind of heady, highfalutin ideas that you're discovering on Reddit, on the
Yeah.
dark web, and among the Bitcoin community, and bringing that into the real world?
Well, we Argentines are very politicized. We are very we are very activist. We take over the streets when something's not right. We are a very political community, highly political, and probably very soon after that Silk Road initiation experience,
Yeah.
I remember meeting some friends and figuring, well, what happens if we create a political party that proposes candidates that run for Congress, but they will always vote every bill according to how people tell them online how to vote. This was in the context or in the era where social media was starting to become commonplace, or it was a very new phenomenon for Argentines and for the entire planet.
Hmm.
The world was going through the Arab Spring. The world was going through deep transformations. The student revolt in Chile. A new generation was being connected through mobile devices and social media in extraordinarily new ways. And I'm a child of that generation. Like that's when I was 25, 26 years old, and I figured, well, we should do something about the use of technology to change politics. But technology is changing absolutely everything. It's changing how we communicate, how we make finance, how we transact with each other. It's disrupting almost every single industry except politics, except this very old rotten institution that where we perceive that there's some kind of lack of representation between the politicians and the people, and that led to the creation of the Partido de la Red, which was, I always describe it like a bit of a quixotesque endeavor, in the sense that we were maybe a bit too naive of what it takes to build a political party, because it's something that you really cannot build it with money. Some people try to just do it with money, but you really need convincing society, convincing people, and convincing everyone. In a democracy, everyone should be able to understand what you're trying to do. And so we started doing like an open source software for people to participate, called Democracy OS. And then the political party itself, which was, we had a common goal, which was the 2013 election. It was a legislative election here in Argentina. And we did a tremendous collective effort to get the party approved, get the ballots ready for the election, campaigning. We built a massive Trojan horse that we went through the streets of Buenos Aires with this huge horse, because our philosophy was, let us all get into the Congress. It was like a Trojan attack. So it was a beautiful metaphor, very artistic, that we used during the campaign and made quite an impact. And we ended up having 1% of the votes, which
It's
is
not
not
nothing.
it's not nothing. 1.2%, 22,000 votes. We needed 3% to get the candidate elected. We didn't get the candidate elected. We were a small, local party. But the technology that we had built, one day I get an email from one of the programmers, and he says to me, "Hey, Santi, check this out. This is really weird." And I open the browser, and I see our software, Democracy OS, completely in Arabic. And I'm like, what is this? What are they using the software for?
Mm.
And my friend told me they're using it to debate the national constitution in Tunisia. And it's a non-profit organization, and they have 20,000 users that they brought it to the software, and they're debating each article of the potential new Tunisian revolution, or the new Tunisian constitution. And it was like mind blown, because our software was open source. Anyone could clone it, fork it, adapt
Sure.
it. And we started seeing many implementations of it. We saw it in Barcelona, we saw it in Colombia, we saw it all around the world, really. In Hong Kong, the umbrella movement. We did all kinds of crazy implementations that also, because this is digital, we can also explore new game theoretic approaches to how democracy should work. We could explore better interfaces, better, all kinds of ways of improving the democratic experience for everyone. And even though we didn't get the candidate elected, the technology we built really caught the attention of the world, and that's what actually got me into Y Combinator in 2015,
Mm.
and that's where we started the Democracy Earth Foundation. When back in those days, Sam Altman was the president of YC,
Yep.
so I knew Sam Altman before Sam Altman was Sam Altman, and it was an exciting time where I think we still had that perception that technology was a force that was going to change absolutely everything.
Sure.
I think that in the later years, social media, for instance, this utopian feeling kind of became a bit dystopian
Yep.
after Cambridge Analytica and fake news, or and now with AI, deep fakes, and all of this stuff. So technology has always this process of enchantment and illusion and utopia, and then comes a process of disenchantment, or players that use it for malicious goals, and those are some of the ongoing battles that we face today. But I remain a techno optimist in general, especially when you compare the new paradigm of doing things with how traditional things work.
Well, you had a front row seat to this kind of mobile social revolution, and
Mm.
now you've kind of, I guess, adopted your platform or adapted your platform more to the kind of crypto and crypto
Hmm.
political scene. Most people think of crypto as kind of the new global financial rails. I
Mm.
think fewer people, but more and more, are thinking about it as a political tool. So I'm curious what you learned from the social
Yeah.
mobile revolution and how, if at all, that applies in the crypto context.
So when we started doing our software, Democracy OS, this is 2012, 2013. This is before Ethereum. Uh, I remember trying to build things with Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is simply just not programmable, or it's not Turing complete, or it's harder to build things with. I got involved in exchanges and stuff like that, but really it was not malleable and not a malleable technology. So this was all pre-Ethereum,
Mm.
and in many ways it was the rise of smart contracts was the missing component that we lacked with the software. For instance, I was very proud of the software we did, but I knew perfectly well how people were able to manipulate elections on the internet.
Yeah.
In a centralized server, if you have the sysadmin or whoever manages the database, that person in very subtle ways can accelerate certain members or their family members to register for an election, and could delay in a very subtle way those who he disagrees with.
Right.
So the bias of the sysadmin, or the bias of whoever has control of the voter registry, in a very subtle way can manipulate the outcome of an election. So to me, it became very clear that decentralization, not just for money like what Bitcoin did, but decentralization also for identity, is extremely important if we want to see democracy happening over the internet. And that's when, in 2016, 2017, with Democracy Earth, the first thing we did was to do the social smart contract. We brought in researchers, activists from all over the world, many, many good friends that have worked with me over the years, and then they ended up doing careers in digital democracy in their own countries. And we drafted collectively this paper that tries to bring a vision of how democracy should be on the 21st century as these new technologies rise and appear, and try to cover as much as possible every single aspect of it in a GitHub open public paper, not doing an academic paper, but really a collaborative democratic effort, the paper itself. And it was an incredible document to build that gave us a hint of where things could go in the future. We talked there about quadratic voting, liquid democracy, UBI,
Yep.
proof of personhood, many of the ideas that later on we ended up implementing. And the one of the most interesting experiments that I was part of with Ethereum was the proof of humanity DAO, which was also tackling this problem of decentralizing identity
Hmm.
through a protocol that has different mechanisms for a person to control their own identity, and also to denounce or challenge duplicate identities or deep fakes through decentralized mechanisms. This was built by Kleros, which is a very impressive company in the space. And I coded the UBI token that got streamed into all of the verified identities in the Proof of Humanity registry. And we launched that in 2021, and it made a tremendous impact because, especially here in Argentina and in other places around the world, Bitcoin back then was touching for the first time $60,000. People were interested in Web3 and crypto again after the pandemic. The pandemic, I think, it led to a lot of people learning the ropes, watching videos, watching tutorials, especially here in Argentina. Like, it was a quantum leap in terms of how many people were actually using crypto. And when we launched that, was the Proof of Humanity DAO, to me was one of the most incredible political experiences, even more so than the Partido de la Red, because it was really a democracy from the future.
Mm.
It was we had delegated voting, we had quadratic delegations to avoid the formation of majorities among delegates, and some very smart actors that were trying to get control of the DAO and competing for power, which was very interesting to watch and to learn from that.
Yeah. Well, I had a chance to read the Social Smart Contract a couple of times in the past week, and it's a very impressive artifact. I mean, like I said before, you've taken these kind of ideas and you've concretized them in like an academic paper, almost mathematical modeling. There's a little bit of code in there. It's an open source document that people can contribute to. It's a living and
There's
breathing
still
document.
happening contributions.
Yeah,
Still to this day, I get
yeah,
translations, and it's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah. That's incredible. Um, what I wanted to ask you, I mean, my high level takeaway, and I think this is a somewhat direct question, is um, are legacy nation states
Mm,
compatible with the internet era and the crypto era?
that's a great question, and that's a great question. The I used to think, or kind of echoing John Lennon's "Imagine," a world without frontiers
Mm,
should be the way the things should work, right? Why do we have these weird restrictions to the movement of humans in this planet? It still feels surreal to me. At the same time, what nations bring is a, a healthy equilibrium. The nation state, at least since the Westphalia agreements in 1650 or something like that, this principle of non-intervention in the domestic affairs of your neighbor
mhm,
kind of brought a scalable way of bringing peace to the world, with some terrible exceptions with the world wars and stuff like that. But in general, it seems to be a model that could scale governance on a global level. Um, I think that nationalities have they have a very clear component of proximity among your community, among your family members, among your traditions, and all of those things are important to preserve for the sake of diversity in the planet, right? If we all become one single nation in the world, or one single state in the world, that could be a totalitarian concept, because if that state becomes a dictatorship, you would have nowhere to go. You had nowhere to escape. So the idea of having multiple nations or multiple nation states is not necessarily a bad thing in
sure.
terms of preserving the diversity, and giving the people an ability to exit the risk of a totalitarian threat, which, in Argentina, we had a dictatorship in the 70s, and a lot of people went to other countries in Latin America, or went to Spain, or went to the US. And it's good to have escape routes, right? For the sake of human rights. Um, so in that regard, I see some. As I grew up, I see. I have a positive look in terms of how the cost of creating nation states, blood, sweat, and tears. It's not. You have to have some respect for that history, and I learned that in my process of being an activist as I grew up, probably, or as I became maybe a father, or maybe I became more conservative with the years. That said, I think that the Leviathan itself of the nation state feels feels very old for sure. The legislative process, the economy, the ability, the restrictions, the petty politics. Um, that's I think that ideas like network states are exciting, but ultimately it's this question about the monopoly of violence, and it boils down to who has that kind of power.
Yep.
And in that regard, we'll see how. I think that I do consider Bitcoin and Ethereum network states in many ways, right? They are, and you do see the similarities in the communities. Bitcoiners tend to be maximalist, toxic, beef-eating, male, right-wing voters, Austrian economics, probably Republicans. Ethereans are more diverse, are builders, are trying to hack things, more friendly to the rainbow than and more open-minded, in my view, at least, less toxic. And you see the formation of these communities around these algorithms or these technologies, and how the personalities of people that embrace these technologies reflect the virtue or the features of the networks, right? And to me, that's a very new phenomena that's exciting to see happening. Um, and I'm sure that it will be evolving throughout this century. And we'll see how it, if it competes or if
Sure.
it doesn't compete with the nation state. But certainly, network states will find opportunity anywhere in the world where there's a proper context for those kinds of organizations to thrive.
Right. Well, it certainly could end up being a binary, right? We might,
Yeah.
ditch legacy states and move toward this kind of pure liquid citizenship network state concept. Maybe.
As an Argentine, I still wish that the World Cup, the football World Cup, still happens. I
That's
don't want to miss that.
well, maybe it'll be the Bitcoin versus the Ethereum Foundation
Right,
in the in the
imagine
in the
that.
final.
Ethereum and Bitcoin in the World Cup final or
Yeah.
in the United Nations, who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah. So in the internet age, you start to lose some of the contours of the value of a nation state, particularly because you all of a sudden you have access to people globally, right? It kind
Yeah.
of the idea of culture is flattened. I start to develop more in common with someone that lives on the other side of the world than
Yeah.
my own neighbor, and we've seen this kind of grow exponentially over time with mobile and with social, and then social on steroids with TikTok
Yeah.
and taking over our lives. Um, you mentioned the importance of preserving kind of your culture, your traditions,
Mm.
being pro variance, but also the importance of the ability to exit and to move freely between countries. And so I'm rambling a little bit here, but what I'm trying to get at is there some sort of hybrid between a
Mm.
legacy state and a network state, or some version of that that would make
The
sense in your mind?
yeah, the the exit route, which is, for instance, I've seen Balaji Srinivasan talk about this. One of the main thinkers of the network state. Um, is a feasible route, where you want to flock to places where you find like-minded people and you find your tribe and you find your gang. Um, but sometimes I guess, all families have a black sheep,
Sure.
and the other route is the route of trying to figure out ways you can care for people, where you don't necessarily need to exit from your community and go to somewhere else and try to build something that is actually facing the drama or the urgent needs that society is facing. Um, because I could easily exit my country, and I've done it. I lived abroad for 10 years, and I lived in Silicon Valley, and I found the most fascinating people around the world. But what I realized living abroad, and this is very personal, but this element of the roots to your traditions or the roots to your family, to your childhood friends, or all of those things, even though in an abstract way I can rationalize and I'm like, okay, I'm fine hanging out with the smartest minds of my generation in San Francisco, there's still a very powerful feeling, at least to me or in my sensitivity, that I feel this longing for Argentina. I feel, when I'm abroad and I see Argentina winning the World Cup and I'm not celebrating in the streets, how in the way I was raised to see how my community does it,
Yep.
you feel this longing, and I think that's what kind of makes the idea of nationality or nations not just an abstract idea, but something that actually might have a component that is very tangible, very very concrete in how we are as a species.
Right.
Um, and I have a brother living in the U.S., a sister living in Switzerland. The world has become globalized,
Yep.
and the world is full of opportunity, and we should all pursue our best. But exit is not always the answer, at least in my view. Sometimes I think that we should, for instance, here in Latin America or here in Argentina, I think that the biggest challenge that we face is the tremendous poverty rates that our communities are suffering. Like in Argentina, we have 5,000 slums. I could easily make a living in Silicon Valley making technology to make better technology, and probably make a great amount of money doing that. But what I like about the Web3 movement, especially with, for instance, Dev Connect, which is this conference that does not happen in the Bay Area, happens anywhere in the world where there seems to be a very real need for adoption of these technologies, like now in Buenos Aires, or what happened in Bogota or in Bangkok. Uh, and That's the thing about decentralization, that you can start thinking solutions that really can help your community, your society, and can really think about the bottom line and can really think. I remember when I went with Vitalik to one of the most famous slums here in Buenos Aires.
Mm.
Uh, and we discovered while walking around the neighborhood, Vitalik was asking about the buildings, the infrastructure, how people live, how families arranged. Uh, and a bunch of teenagers came to us and they knew absolutely everything about Ethereum and about Vitalik's life. And they grew in that very poor slum, in that very poor neighborhood in Buenos Aires. But access to the internet, access to technology, and curiosity allow them to become knowledgeable about Ethereum, about Web3. They were already trading NFTs and tokens, and to me that was mind blowing because it made me think, well, this technology is able to actually reach places of society that not even the state, not even
Right.
the banks, and not even the church sometimes is able to reach out.
Yep.
And these are, it's in relation to your social commitment to change things, and ultimately, even though I lived abroad for many years, I ended up coming back to Argentina because I feel like I have some duty to my local community, whether I like it or not. And I feel that's one of the interesting things about Web3.
Mm.
Ultimately, it's like when Peter Thiel said to Elon Musk, when Mars is the ultimate exit.
Yep.
Okay, you go to Mars, and then what?
Yeah.
And then you will have your animal farm in Mars, your political
Right.
revolt in Mars, and then where you will exit? You will exit to what? To Venus or to you cannot keep exiting your whole life.
Sure.
And ultimately, facing society's problems, I think, is the real challenging thing behind it all.
So you've had this homecoming, and you obviously the power and influence of Web3 and crypto, and democracy has been this through line in your career. In the social smart contract, there was a line that struck me, which was that democracy is bottlenecked by information bandwidth. And I wanted to better understand what you meant by that and how
Mm.
perhaps you think about changing that.
Democracy is the one exception. It's not a complete or an absolute idea. Otherwise, it would be a totalitarian ideology like all the other ideologies out there. It's the one exception. It's always a work in progress. It's always incomplete. It's always it's something that needs to be able to deliver a legitimate decision. Is democracy is about the construction of that legitimacy, and usually you go for a vote for very very hard decisions. Not you don't go for a vote like if you're asking who should design an airplane, well, an aerospace engineer. It's an obvious, trivial, simple thing that you wouldn't go for a vote for. You go for a vote for difficult decisions and address very high stakes choices that have a lot of that a lot in the game, a lot of money involved or a lot of resources involved, and usually high stakes decisions has very hostile players that are willing to do whatever it takes to win, whether
Yeah.
it's legal or illegal. Usually in democracies you will find corrupt players willing to exploit or to bend the rules in their favor. And it's a very challenging kind of technology to build something that has to be that resilient.
Yeah.
um, and I've seen it in like in the Partido de la Red, in Proof of Humanity, in every single democratic experiment I led. I witnessed the brilliance and the Machiavellian lack of scruples of some players,
Right.
which makes you wonder, how really hard this problem is. Um, and you have this the challenge of democracy is that ideally you want people to have perfect information about what they're voting, how it impacts their lives and how it changes their interests, but that not necessarily always happens. You always have more people who are committed to the process or to the election than the rest. So the asymmetry of information among voters is a big challenge.
Mm.
um, a good solution for that is delegative democracy. I don't know enough of this subject, so I delegate my vote to someone I trust, who will be representing my vote. Ideally, that delegation happens horizontally. You can choose among any member of society, not like in traditional legacy democracies where the national parties choose the candidates and then you are
Right.
restricted to this reality show of very few candidates. Um, and those are some of the mechanisms that help address information asymmetry in democratic decision making. So you produce a result that if the process is legitimate enough, the losing side will agree with the outcome.
Mm.
And that's a democracy that works,
I see.
one where the losers agree and accept the outcome of the election. And that's not always easy to do.
Sure.
In crypto, a lot of people fork, they exit. And that breaks communities apart and splits them in two. And that's fine. In cyberspace, that's a doable thing. You just fork away and build your own version of the project here and there. But ultimately, the challenge of democratic tools is to make sure you find solutions that are inclusive, that are for everyone, that reaches, that does not marginalize anyone from the decision-making process.
Sure.
And it's everything sounds easier than it's to say than
Than it is to do.
than it is to do, for
That's right.
sure.
So when I read your comment on bandwidth, increasing bandwidth for democracy, I thought of kind of bandwidth in my own brain capacity, and that
Mm,
it feels like where there's more and more information coming in, and sometimes it would be nice to have some sort of brain computer interface that could run like an AI model on the side and help me process all this information. So I can imagine how a bolt on for like a legacy system like a democracy could work. I can also see the downsides of something like that. I think in some ways, governments and democracies were designed to be slow, to bake
yeah,
inertia into the system because you don't want to make rash decisions
right,
for a population of 300 million people, for
right.
example. So, how do you reconcile those two things?
Yeah, when we started the Proof of Humanity DAO, It was the first democratic and probably the only democratic DAO in all of Ethereum. And
Mm.
like all of the DAOs that you will see on the Web3 ecosystem, to be honest, they are plutocratic. Use coin voting, token voting. And the whales are the real decision makers,
Yeah.
the large holders, the investors, the founders probably. And with Proof of Humanity, since it was we were able to do one person, one vote. We did the first DAO that actually worked that way. When we started that DAO, we thought, okay, we'll make democratic decision making for how the protocol works, the treasury of the DAO, and the rules of the DAO itself. Like those were the three big things. And 6 months into the game, it became like a very highly politicized community. Where we had two super delegates. One was Clement, who was the founder of Kleros, a brilliant guy, but very, very evil genius, I would say. And the other one was myself, that I came with the UBI project and connected UBI to the Proof of Humanity protocol, and we cared about doing universal basic income in the ecosystem. And it was interesting to me to see that because it was like a hyper democracy. It became, we had all kinds of campaigning for one side or the other. We had two factions eventually forming in the ecosystem, and for a brief moment, I wondered, is this what we really want for society? Like in
Yeah.
becoming like a very hostile, very highly politicized, competitive environment
Well,
where
almost recreating just the analog scenario
exactly
on
all the
chain.
evils of the analog, like smear campaigning
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
trolls attacking on Twitter. And
Maybe that's human nature. I
it's
don't know.
yeah, I saw it was human nature at incredible fast pace
Right.
on Telegram, on Twitter, and
Turbocharged. Yeah.
turbocharged. Um, I remember one of my favorite stories there was that Clement, he started farming delegations for himself in Burma because he had a Burmese girlfriend. And one day from the other, like a lot of Burmese users appeared in the Telegram groups of Proof of Humanity. And when they register on the protocol, in the same transaction, they would delegate voting power to him.
Mm.
And that pissed me off because I thought he was going to take over the DAO and become the more powerful person when we had an equilibrium of two parties, let's say, like Democrats and Republicans. So that's where we pushed the idea of quadratic delegations. Let's compute delegations not in a linear way, but let's just do the square root of delegations,
Yeah.
with the argument that that would incentivize for delegators to give their votes to people with few delegations rather than to concentrate power to people with many delegations, because the more delegations you would get, the less impact it would have because of the quadratic rule.
Right.
Which was that got approved. It was to me, from a game theoretic point of view, was a fascinating approach to sort out this problem of delegation
Concentration. Right.
concentration, and it was a way of protecting minorities in the ecosystem, and we won that one. And then and then we had an election to kick Clement out from the mission board of the of the DAO, which we won for 10 with a 10 vote difference, thanks to the quadratic delegations.
Yeah.
And now the stress of living through all of those things was more stressful than doing politics in Argentina. Like. Um, I guess probably because of my involvement with the project, or probably because of how passionate we all were about what we were trying to build. And when you talk about identity, you're really talking about human rights, and you're talking about identity is the mother of all battles, is the one vulnerability being exploited across all systems. But yeah, governance, we shouldn't live for governance, and in a sense, it's a very toxic life. If becoming a politician is a life decision that it's you are willing to live a life in public and to receive criticism from everyone, and it's not really a very easy life.
Sure.
And it's interesting to me to see how those experiments unfolded in unexpected ways. um, Maybe as we know, these all of the things that I'm telling you about were prior to the revolution of the transformer and ChatGPT and the AI wave that we're living through right now. Maybe in the future or in the near present, we can start seeing AI becoming a relevant factor in terms of how it informs the decisions to us, or how it can synthesize the debates of the community, or how it can find the common ground. Uh, at the risk that if we delegate too much to the AI, maybe that puts us humans at risk.
Yeah.
So that's the new big question that I'm actually facing, coming from the Democracy Earth Foundation. Is we're entering in an era where how we rule AI or how AI will rule us is
Sure.
like one big question. There's clearly an opportunity there to deal with this information bandwidth problem of democracy and decision making. But at the same time, AI is a substrate that is a Pandora's box that has been opened, and we don't know where it will lead us.
Yep.
I tend to be optimistic about it, and I'm a big AI user myself. In Web3 communities, something that AI can bring that can be revolutionary is that historically, in communities, in DAOs, but in the world also, you have two classes. In DAOs, you have the developers and you have the users. The developers have the power to write code and to change the rules of the protocol factually, effectively. In society, maybe if you look at the Congress, you in Argentina, 70% of Congress members, something like that, are lawyers.
Right.
They are the ones who get to write the rules, the code, or interpret how justice works and the law works. Which is, programmers are the lawyers of the 21st century. But with AI, programming can become something that is much more closer to human language, to the way we speak everyone speaks, or everyone is alphabetized. And in that regard, maybe in the future, everyone can make contributions to the design of a protocol by simply prompting AI, or by simply writing in natural language stuff in a much more democratic way. And this developer versus user problem or class problem is not as big anymore, which is, in the proof of humanity now, that was, I would argue, that was also the divide we had.
Right.
We had a divide between the developers and the users being way more, but with less tools to actually push change,
Sure.
and the developers having a lot of control, even though they were on the minority side.
Yeah.
And maybe a layer of artificial intelligence can help to make these tools easier for everyone to contribute and to provide insightful ideas that can help these protocols work better. And eventually, we can see how these technologies can scale to the rest of society in general.
Can you imagine a scenario where people might delegate their votes to an AI agent that's running on top of the governance protocol you've built?
I think that's something that we will see for sure.
Because there's some danger there as well.
There's danger there. There's danger there, and sometimes AI will say A, and then sometimes it will say B, and AI itself is not that consistent. I guess it depends on how it's the master prompt behind it tells the AI to operate. Maybe we as a community, we vote on that prompt that will rule the behavior of the AI.
Yeah.
Um, but I wouldn't see that as something that's very far fetched. There have been some marketing attempts by some governments already announcing an AI minister, like in
Sure.
Albania.
Yeah.
That those are clearly PR stunts.
But maybe to stretch the analogy a little bit. So you're building these governance systems on chain. You mentioned that coders are the new lawyers. We're enshrining
Hmm,
our legal system into like a smart contract. If you have the smart contract is the government, the constitution. You need politicians on top of that to kind of
right.
make changes that you delegate
Exactly.
to. So, is there a world in which you think we have these delegates or senators or statesmen that are effectively, it could be one big centralized AI, or it could be this democratized version where everyone kind of codes up their own kind of mini agent that runs their own preference protocol.
Yeah,
Have you even thought to how that might work?
yeah. I'm actively thinking about this. How AI plays a role in governance of organizations. I think you know, it's still a bit of a tricky thing because AI is probabilistic, and it can be fooled. AI has hallucinations. Still, it gives you false positives when it's giving you back an answer. There was this exercise that I recently read on a paper where people had to pay an AI to prompt it, and on the prompt you have to make the AI give you the money that everyone is paying the AI to protect, and I think the AI ended up having a pool of $50,000, and someone eventually figured out how to fool the AI, so they got the $50,000 reward. And so how secure, how safe AI is when it's one of the strangest substrates to me as a programmer to deal with. When I built some agents in the past, it's weird to me that I have to write a prompt where I am trying to tell the AI, well, if someone asks you about this, take this action, or if someone asks you how to do certain things, make this other action. And then when you put the agent live, you really don't know if the AI will do exactly as you told the AI to behave.
Right.
Eventually, it behaves like it should, but sometimes it doesn't, and it's very, very like it's not deterministic. When we write code, we know exactly what output we will get out of every single line of input, and if you change a comma, everything changes altogether. This is a complete different animal, which is can be very unpredictable.
Right.
I think you know, it has the capacity to parse and analyze and read all of our opinions and maybe draft a constitution based on everyone's opinions and find common ground. But still, there's this famous slide from IBM from the 1970s that says, never allow a computer to make a decision because a computer is not liable,
Hmm.
cannot take responsibility for that decision. So at the end of the day, it's just another tool that can help to deal with the information bandwidth problem, can help improve how we as citizens get informed. Um, Hopefully in a way that's not manipulating us,
Sure.
which is the big risk of AI. We have already seen in elections around the world how deepfakes are being instrumentalized in a malicious way to cheat, our parents or our grandparents,
Sure.
again, confusing them with fake messages. That's a nasty way or a malicious way of using the technology that's having an impact everywhere in the world. So it has many challenges and many open questions right now. Um, I
Do you think if AI becomes sufficiently, let's say we achieve AGI or
yeah.
ASI at some point in the future, and it becomes sufficiently integrated into our society and into our governance structure, that perhaps one day we will give some AI citizenship or liability
Mhm.
or
Well,
human rights or AI rights?
a friend of mine who's a Congress member here in Buenos Aires, he said that he wanted to create the AI legal persona.
Mm.
And maybe if we reach AGI, there are some researchers like David Deutsch from Oxford University who
Right.
says that if AGI is really the AI becomes awake, then necessarily the AI will develop a personality. It will develop a sense of self
Mm.
for its own survival, for its own sake. Which is wild to hear coming from one of the most prestigious researchers in information theory and quantum computing. Um, eh, I don't know how far we are from AGI, but and I don't know if AGI is like the perpetual motion machine, also like something that the industry uses to keep pushing, moving the dollars around for investment.
Right.
I remain a bit skeptical about it, but there are some interesting theories around it. Like, for instance, what happens if you have an AI that's trained with all of the information of society and history and science until the year 1900? Is if that AI is able to figure out quantum theory, relativity, and
Right.
information theory, then some people would argue that's an AGI because it's able to create new science in the same way that our civilization created new science.
Without
So,
having been trained on
and
that.
then
Yeah.
you just do the 22nd century, 23, 24, and you accelerate time. Maybe we are not that far away from something like that, on AI being able to figure better solutions, or new paths, new science, new politics. Um, but it's ultimately a question of the kill switch. If AI becomes agentic, autonomous, and has and it lives in this digital body across the entire world. uh, it's it always comes to my mind that, like, this movie from Stanley Kubrick, the 2001 The Space Odyssey,
Sure.
where the human at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, sorry you had 50, 60 years to see the movie, but the human kind of ends in a zoo, ends in a nice little house for the human to live and to get old, and to the spaceman is just alone there in that beautiful, like, house. And it's really a zoo. It's
Mm.
the AI or the entity or whatever super intelligence. And I wonder if that's an outcome that we should face, as we are facing for the first time entities or instruments that are way more intelligent than we are. And we, as a species with lesser intelligent species, we haven't been that nice. So in that regard, the warnings that doomers do about AI, I think that are also very serious warnings that we should take into consideration, even those of us who are moderate accelerationists, like myself.
Sure. Well, let's take like a middle of the road scenario where
Okay.
maybe we don't have artificial super intelligence, but we got something better than we have today.
Yeah.
And crypto keeps advancing on the finance front, on the government and governance front, and we've bolted on some sort of AI or agentic AI to kind of help run the democratic process. In that scenario, let's say 20, 30 years from now, do you imagine that veering more towards a pure direct democracy, or something that
Mm.
ends up being authoritarian in nature without intending to be so?
I'm actually working on stuff like around this, on building a democratic tool where you can configure, the kind of type of election you want, the type of voting that you want, and how you are able to validate the users that want to participate in the election. And I find that there are some places where you can use AI that are very handy. For instance, drafting a proposal.
Mm,
Uh, if any one of us has to draft a proposal, probably our own bias will be part of the language that we will use when trying to explain the proposal to people, right? And that maybe is something that an AI could figure out. Like, I remember the Pirate Party 15 years ago.
yeah,
I read this in an old interview. The most powerful, they had this liquid democracy decision making tool in Berlin,
yeah.
and the most powerful person in the entire Pirate Party was the person responsible for drafting the proposals, who was this linguist who specialized in bringing those proposals into a neutral language.
I remember
And
that.
he was actually the one that got more delegations than anyone else in the Pirate Party
Yeah,
ecosystem. So he kind of was an AI, the ability to receive many inputs, many prompts, many texts, and find a common ground and draft something that's neutral and it's non-biased. Maybe that's a place where AI serves a good job and brings useful information to the voters.
mm,
And that's like a feature that I would argue that's desirable and necessary.
mm.
Uh, even in social media, if sometimes I wonder, Twitter is nowadays is really like this toxic place where it, having a discussion, having a debate is really impossible. You are either with us or against us.
Right.
There's no middle ground. If you are a free thinker, you're a traitor to one side or the other, and it's become this nasty place of toxic trolls fighting each other with memes and with misinformation. And I wonder, well, maybe there's a place where maybe in the future AI can help, re-articulate how people express themselves and avoid any kind of
Mediate
toxic
this. Yeah.
messaging. And
Yeah.
so maybe there are linguistic filters that AI can bring to the table that can help, finding common ground. Um, but the problem of the tragedy of the commons and the problem of politics is that not all everyone has in their agenda to find common ground.
Sure.
And a lot of people, they are just pushing for their own view of things, and they would do whatever it takes for their view
Yeah.
to trump any of the other views. And that's the tricky thing about politics. And but I think that certainly we will see interesting, like AI being applied to programming, or AI being applied to improving the messaging, or AI, like in those aspects. I think that it will be bring positive outcomes to the communities.
Okay, let's say we find a way to build a kind of perfect on-chain governance system, and this maybe is a fantasy scenario, but let's say we get close to perfect, right?
Arrow's impossibility theorem is probably impossible, but anyway.
Okay, let's say 90% of the way there. We got something that you've modeled out, and you've run, Monte Carlo simulations for elections, and it feels pretty battle tested. One area that is a fairly hot topic at the moment in crypto, and I see as a potential hole in your theory of building kind of on-chain voting systems, is around privacy.
Mm,
Privacy around your vote is important for free and fair elections. Everything in crypto is publicly verifiable by
mm.
default. Now that's starting to change to some degree because of new privacy-enhancing technologies. I'm curious how much you think about privacy in this context, because I think it's a
Privacy
critical cornerstone for.
is extremely important, especially in the context of voting and democracy. In the proof of humanity case, we were not able to really deliver it because people had to make a proof with a video of themselves, and that's really not that private. And the ideal system is a system where you vote privately, you can verify your vote without revealing the content of your vote, and you can check the integrity of the vote in the sense that it has been properly tallied, or it has been properly counted.
Mm,
And achieving all of those conditions is not really that easy in terms of how the cryptography works and how, or what the possibilities are. There's always an element that requires education for the user to learn a little bit of the ropes on how to use these things. There are some exciting technologies out there, like zero knowledge proofs applied over legal documentation from governments. For instance, passports or national identity cards. All of modern passports carry an NFC chip, and then you can scan that NFC chip with your phone and generate a zero knowledge proof, and then demonstrate to the world that you're Argentine, over 18 years old, male, female, non-binary, without disclosing which member of the verified members you are on the list. And I think those are exciting pieces of technology. The challenge that privacy faces is, other than the technological aspects that I'm sure that the brilliant minds that are helping build this new cryptography will contribute to. Um, but the real challenge is a challenge of hygiene, and I
mm,
will use the words of a British defense minister that I met many years ago. You need to teach people how to take care of their private parts,
mm,
and that's a matter of us being educated in order to understand how to do that. In the 19th century, when the first water pipes and cloacal systems were implemented in the UK, there was huge campaigning to teach people to take a bath, to take care of the private parts, to take care, to be hygienic about things.
Sure.
The same goes with data. The same goes with your privacy online. The same goes with the using protecting your information on the internet. The internet that most of us live today is an internet where we're always exposing our email address, which means our identity, which means probably crossing our information with many databases. We're exposing ourselves all the time.
Yep.
And other than the cryptographic innovations, there's a big challenge in terms of alphabetization and teaching people how to really take care of their own privacy, because no one can take care of your privacy other than you.
Right.
You cannot call a
Outsource
friend.
that.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
So there's this larger component of education that needs to come with it.
Okay. I'm interested in talking about elections a little bit more.
Hmm.
Um, you've written about the idea of, I guess you call it liquid voting.
Hmm.
Um, there's a lot that we get solved by moving voting on chain or moving into a digital context. But some of the vulnerabilities that exist in a paper ballot, for example, might exist in a different context on chain. And then there's also vulnerabilities that are unrelated directly to the vote. You mentioned in your paper the idea of some sort of catastrophic event having an influence on the electorate. So, for example, I think it was the 2016 election, there was a DDoS attack that took out AWS servers that caused a panic. And if the right person had the right intel and wanted to run some sort of attack like this, they might be able to sway enough of the electorate in one
Yeah.
direction or another. And that's independent of the substrate that you're voting on, whether it's a
Yeah.
paper ballot or some digital ballot or on chain. So, how do you prepare for these kind of black swan style events, even if you move it into a crypto context?
Every single democratic pilot, digital democracy pilot that I worked on, or most of them, has been exploited or attacked in one way or another.
Mm.
And it's always surprising to me how creative these attacks can be. I remember with the umbrella movement in Hong Kong, we did a shadow referendum to vote for a mayor for the city of Hong Kong, challenging the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and we did this on Telegram, and where people were able to vote with their Telegram identities, and we would persist the votes back then using the Bitcoin blockchain, using a modern cryptographic technique called Merkle trees. So in one transaction, we could store many potential votes.
Mm-hmm.
And we were so excited about the approach that we were having to this technological election. Um, we never expected that we would have like 600,000 users coming from one single IP, kind of flooding the election.
Right.
Obviously, they all came from China, and they completely took over the entire thing, and they broke the experiment. And maybe we could have make some, there's again, democracy needs to be something resilient in very hostile environments where there will be actors that will do whatever it takes in order to win the election. uh, Small elections and large elections, it's a very tricky problem. um, and you're always facing these challenges with digital democracies. um, it's these are all very some attacks can be more subtle, some attacks can be more explicit, uh, but it's that's why democracy is incomplete. It's a work in progress.
Right.
It's like a constantly evolving beast that needs to adapt itself to all kinds of exploits and changes and attacks. Um, I wish I had the ideal formula for governance, and the ideal, obviously depends on the context and the application or the technology that you are trying to build. Sometimes good old corporate governance with shares or with coin voting works for most technologies, and that's it. Uh, but what I do care is trying to figure out how to do technology that can serve society as a whole, and eventually technology that can really be inclusive and make everyone participate, which is the purpose of democracy. And democracy is what you are trying to push forward in order to create societies that eventually are more fair, more just, that bring opportunity for everyone, where representation of everyone in whether it's Congress or whether it's some entity is properly reflected. Where in Argentina's history during the 19th century, only the rich people were able to vote. Eventually we had the popular vote for everyone, and eventually we had the vote including for vote inclusion for women in the 50s. It took many years of activism and battles and yeah, political action in order to get those very simple changes implemented.
Right.
And there are a lot of resistance from the system itself. Change is it's always feared. But that's why you have to keep on pushing and keep on trying to improve how things work.
Yep.
Attacks will happen, exploits will happen, but you should use those in order to improve the next iteration or the next version of what you're building.
I'm curious if you have like a YC style request for startups in this domain. I mean, you probably have a million ideas and you can't work on all of them. What would you like to see being built out there?
That's what I like about the Web3 movement, or when Dev Connect happens and you get to meet so many like-minded folks from around the world, and sometimes the things that you have been thinking on your own or with your colleagues, suddenly you realize that there are a lot of teams out there that are thinking the same direction, the same way. Um, the one, the one. If I look at the different implementations of digital democracy that I made in the past, I would say that with Partido de la Red and Democracy OS, we were thinking about making the software open source. Okay, check. The software needs to be open source. Then with Proof of Humanity, which I kind of think of Proof of Humanity like Partido de la Red 2.0, there we had, implemented blockchain, Ethereum, decentralization for identity, which, open source and decentralized. Okay, those are two key features. Now the new wave, or the next big challenge that we're facing is AI. How AI can help improve things, whether AI can help making contributions, technical contributions to non-technical people, or whether AI can help neutralizing the content of the proposals, or AI can help, or AI can be like the perfect president, and maybe we just give the AI, like having an AI. This is one of the things that feels exciting to me about AI agents in the future. What happens if you build an AI or an agent that has sovereign control of a treasury, of a DAO, and only that AI knows the private keys to control those assets,
Mm.
those funds? No human is able to actually is ever exposed to the private keys, and the AI has complete control over a treasury, and the AI decides how to allocate funds to community members who are asking for a grant, or to community members. Um, a good friend of mine who recently passed away, Matt Travisano, who was one of the legends of the Argentine tech sector, he was building this angel AI venture firm that was basically an AI that you connected over a Zoom call, and you would pitch the AI your startup idea, and you give it your deck, you pitch it in front of a camera, and you are talking to an artificial intelligence that will parse every single thing you say and will ask you questions, and the AI would make a decision in the next hour whether or not to give you $5,000.
Mm.
And that's like a VC-run AI firm that has no humans, that makes very cold decisions and allocates real money like that. It's like a mind-blowing idea. I'm
Yeah,
sure we will see things like that in the future.
sure.
But this idea of having an AI being like and then we face this in Proof of Humanity. The treasury of the DAO itself went through a gridlock where some things were voted, but the execution of those decisions were controlled by those who had real good knowledge about how the treasury or the smart contract of the treasury work.
Yep.
If you just give that responsibility to the AI and you just pitch the AI and the AI decides how to allocate funds, that would be interesting to see.
Mm, I like it.
Maybe the AI makes very bad decisions. Maybe the AI makes bad choices,
Yeah.
but maybe the AI makes brilliant choices. It can self-perfect, it can self-improve, it can track its decisions over time and include that history in the next iteration of how it makes the next decision. Um, but yeah, I've been playing with some frameworks that help you build agents like Elisa OS, and you can easily connect it to a Solana or an Ethereum wallet,
Mm,
and just let the agent do whatever
sure.
with the wallet. But then you are giving responsibility to the AI, and
For your
it's a way
personal
of
finances.
humans.
Yeah. Maybe if it does a good enough job, it'll run for
Yeah,
president one
maybe
day.
it's super successful and it becomes like a billionaire,
Yeah.
and who knows?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to close out on a topic that I think you're uniquely attuned to, which is the kind of the flow between the digital and the physical realm. When you work in the tech sector, when you're writing code, when you work in crypto, things are pure, hyper efficient,
Mm,
clean, and when you get into the real world, it becomes very messy very quickly. And so I think you're uniquely positioned to kind of, I suppose, evangelize how we should go about
mm,
making these decisions, especially as crypto and AI start to creep more and more
mm,
into real world implications, whether that is something positive like, I don't know, solving the climate crisis or a humanitarian crisis or bringing direct democracy to regions that aren't
mm.
quite as fortunate to have that system of governance. Um, but also for some of the potential threats out there. So, kind of what's your framework for operating between these two realms?
It's really two realms. I'm 42 years old, and I feel like I'm right in the middle of two generations, which is really not millennials or Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, Centennials, whatever. It really boils down to the offline generation and the online generation. And I feel like I'm in the middle due to my age. I once got introduced at a conference as a senior millennial, like an old millennial. I don't even know what I am anymore, but I was clearly among, we computer geeks were a minority back in the day when I was growing up, when I was in high school. And now I feel like digital culture is everywhere. Kids today, they want to be streamers, they want to be gamers, they want to be coders. I see this in the younger generations. The generation in power right now is the offline generation. It's a generation that did not grow up with the internet, did not grow up with the computing capacity that the new generations are growing with. And it's very clear to me when I talk to economists of the Gen X, like even the president of Argentina right now, Javier Milei. Even though he might be a brilliant economist, he's completely ignorant about the most exciting chapter of economics of the 21st century, which is Bitcoin and Ethereum. And he's completely missed the picture, to the point that he did a very, very bad thing with the Libra cryptocurrency, which almost put his government at risk
Mm,
due to his ignorance on the subject. And that's because he belongs to the offline generation, who are uh, you know who are blindsided about these technologies. They don't properly understand them. And then it comes the online generation. In a country like Argentina, more than 50% of the voters are under 40 years old. So we are a young generation, unlike Europe, where most people are probably grandparents or are older. So we have a lot of youth coming along in the years to come that are being raised by these new technologies, these new ways of looking and understanding the world. And I would argue that this generation has probably voted for Javier Milei, these online kids, even though Javier Milei is an offline
Mm,
character. But eventually, new leadership will emerge that comes from the online generation that has a profound knack of how to use artificial intelligence, Web3, crypto, and understand the democratizing and empowering possibilities these technologies bring to people's lives.
mm,
I think that we are genuinely at a pivotal moment in that regard. I come and go between the two worlds as a professional myself. I hang out a lot with computer geeks around the world, but at the same time, I try to help society, and I deal with politicians, or I deal with more traditional organizations, and I think that's a big wave of change that's we're gonna be witnessing for the next 10 years, and the pace of change is. I certainly feel the acceleration of innovation,
mm.
even to the point of, especially this year, 2025, where in AI, in generative AI, we had so many innovations happening almost on a weekly basis
Yeah,
that I felt paralysis by excess of innovation,
yeah,
because I figured, why would I spend time building something with this if in 1 month from now it's going to be way better,
right,
a new release, a new
right.
version, and it has been like that. Uh, and I think there's certainly a sense of acceleration. For instance, when I look at AI coding tools, the whole vibe coding movement, at the beginning of this year, I thought, wow, this is super cool to build landing pages. Now I'm able to build full stack applications with a database, with users. And I thought maybe that would have happened in 3, 4 years from now. But we are just not that good at seeing exponentials, right? And things are happening faster than we expected. So the role that people like me had to, I guess, play in society, first of all, is a role of helping society understand these changes in a language that's accessible for everyone. There's a lot of necessity for that, especially when we talk to our parents and to the older generations. They are scared of these changes,
Mm.
and it's important to pay attention to that fear, because it's a whole new world for them. And so we technologists have a responsibility to not only build good technology and with good ethical principles, but also uh, to spend time teaching, explaining, talking in the media, talking. This week I gave many interviews to explain in the media what Dev Connect is, what the Web3 movement is, why this conference is so important in Argentina,
Yep.
what would and it's. I find myself playing that role more and more, because there people want to learn, want to understand. There's a hunger for knowledge that's unprecedented, like never before. And I think it's up to us who build technology to never forget that it's not just about making the next sexy toy that will kill it in the market, but also making sure that technology brings possibility
Mm.
and opportunity to everyone in your country, in your community, in society.
So, on the topic of your country, I have one final question about the future of Argentina. I had a conversation with our mutual friend Juan Benet the other day,
Yes, great guy.
and a great guy, uh, incredibly brilliant systems thinker. I love hearing him speak. I had the fortune of interviewing him, and we talked about. Well, he alluded to the idea that in the same way that India was able to skip over broadband and go directly to mobile and leapfrog economies as a result, that there's a potential for Argentina to do the same thing with crypto. And that's why he's been pushing and supporting the Crecimiento movement
Yes.
and working on developing special economic zones for crypto development and attracting builders and developers. I'm curious what your hopes are for the country in the context of crypto. Where do you see the country in 10 years' time?
Um, I'm so thankful that Juan has paid attention to Argentina, and realized the potential it has, and has done the tremendous work he contributed with the Crecimiento, and it will have a lasting impact for sure in Argentina. Um, we are a country that has around 10 million users using crypto in one way or another. One out of every four Argentines use crypto. Probably that's a common thing when you go to the younger generations more than anything else. Last year, Argentina moved around $93 billion in crypto transactions in the country. That's almost one sixth of our GDP.
Mm.
We are number one in users per capita in Latin America, number four globally. So it's a very real thing for many of us, especially in the technology crowd, but certainly it has grown tremendously. I remember when Vitalik came for the first time. I flew from Madrid to Buenos Aires after 2 years being in Spain because of the pandemic, and going from the airport to pick up Vitalik, I saw for the first time billboards in the highway that were all crypto companies from Argentina by Argentinians. Usually, get to see these companies coming from abroad and trying to build their local operation here, but we actually were able to bootstrap our own industry with our own companies, with our own market. And eventually, some of these companies might make it to Latin America, some might try to go global. But there was the impact that crypto had in the economy has been enormous, not just in terms of users, but also in the production of these type of systems, like social smart contract builders are one of the top jobs of engineers here in Argentina. We have some of the largest smart contract auditing company in the world. Open Zeppelin was Argentinian. The largest decentralized metaverse, Decentraland, was Argentinian. So we really, the crypto Web3 wave was for the first time, for me at least, witnessing Argentine entrepreneurs building technologies that competed in the global market, in the cutting edge of technology, in a way that I have never seen it, not even in the dot-com era or in the e-commerce or in the traditional Web2 companies that we have seen in the past. So what Juan is describing is something that's definitely very real, and you can feel it here. I certainly can compare it to Spain or some other places where I lived, where I can definitely tell that Argentina is in the avant-garde of these things. So 10 years from now, um, I hope that maybe in 10 years, or maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, who knows? But maybe we will get to see the first crypto president, or the first Web3 slash, Bitcoin slash Ethereum slash crypto movement in the world of our leadership for society, where um, historically we had economists, we had lawyers, we had some engineers, military, but we still never had like a programmer or an information a theoretic president or leader in the country. And maybe we will see a new generation rise to that, a new kind of leadership that understands this language, that understands these technologies, and that would definitely help make this leapfrog in a much more strategic, profound way.
Mm.
Um, the Javier Milei's NAFU of Libra really, it was a very frustrating thing to see, because we would have expected something different coming from him. But I'm sure that the new generations eventually will be able to shape up leaders that understand this new world and help position Argentina in an even much better place in terms of technological innovation than we'd have seen in the past. I already feel somehow that Buenos Aires is synonym of crypto innovation in the world. It is something that might be in the top 5 or top 10 cities of the world that actually embraces this technology. Um, but in 10 years from now, I hopefully, as a porteño myself, hopefully Buenos Aires will become the crypto capital of the world for sure. And I see that potential every day here.
Fantastic. I'd love to end on an optimistic point.
Of course,
Well,
always.
Santi, thank you so much for joining Stage Change. It's really been a pleasure.
has been a fantastic interview. Thank you for inviting me on this amazing place. And I hope you had an amazing time in Buenos Aires.
I certainly did. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.